That's right! Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers, and welcome to another Smokin' Jim Carrey retrospective. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And Jacob Wild, too.
That's right, and tonight we're talking about The Mask, the second of three Jim Carrey movies that are turning 30 years old this year. Oh boy, where does the time go? Guys, I'm going to go ahead and start this off because honestly, I think I have a really fun story behind my my introductory point to this movie as a child. All right. So, as you all know, or some viewers might not know, but Dragon and Jacob, I assume you remember this. My grandparents had a combination pet store / Halloween store. Well, part of the Halloween store would be, movie memorabilia, so posters, stuff like that. We had a whole collection of old Universal posters, some of which we still have. But primarily, there was one thing that popped up, when I was about 3 years old, going on 4. It was a cardboard cutout of, for me, with no context behind what the actual movie was, a very scary looking Jim Carrey in a yellow zoot suit in the green mask, kind of like doing this same sort of pose that you see here. Y'all know what I fucking thought this was when I first saw it?
What?
I thought it was some sort of weird spin-off of The Haunted Mask.
You
The tricks.
You mean the Goosebumps thing?
Yes,
Exactly.
Thing. So I was terrified of this movie for a minute, guys. I really was, honestly. When I eventually did watch it, it was like, oh, okay, he's basically like a cartoon character. Yeah, that's not scary at all. That's like the opposite of scary.
Which is kind of funny considering the actual comic is very...
No, I know. That is the funny thing, is that the actual comic does kind of like more live up to my sort of like horror movie serial killer vision of him that I had on my initial first impression. So yeah, I had a weird kind of roundabout way of getting to this movie. When I got to it, I did really like it as a kid. For me, and I'm sure a whole generation of people, kind of kickstarted an enthusiasm for Jim Carrey's career. I will say, returning to this movie years later, I was nervous, guys. I was nervous because I have not seen this movie in a good 10 years, probably longer than that. And I am very happy to say this movie very much for me holds up. I'm not crazy about the romance stuff in it, like every 90s movie, I feel like it's kind of like almost shoehorned in. We'll get into that. But other than that, my God, do the effects in this movie just, they hold up like fine wine. Like, seriously, the effects in this movie, by and large, look better than the type of effects we're getting in today's movies. And yeah, just I really love the vibe, the blend of kind of like the comic book shenanigans, and also that kind of like Dick Tracy style sort of seedy crime underbelly to it. This one was quite a pleasant surprise to come back to and find out just how good it held up in a lot of respects. So I'm very excited to talk about this one. All right, let's see. I'm going to throw it to Jacob now because, Jacob, I know that you actually just watched this for the first time.
Yes.
All right.
And the funny thing is, I mentioned, I guess for those of you that have known where I've watched when we did Ace Ventura, I said I was vaguely familiar with that. And again, the same thing kind of goes with this. So I will say, regarding this actual film's content, I was more familiar with this film than I was Ace Ventura. Like, I was more familiar with like the overall vibe, some of the scenes and things like that. The movie, and of course, for a while, and out of context, I did watch the Cuban Pete scene, so I was very familiar. So I very well knew about that. And don't get me wrong, it's awesome. The scene is awesome. So basically, so yeah, this is pretty much my first time watching this movie in its entirety. And And Dragon, you know me. I liked Ace Ventura, right? Dragon, you and I did Ace Ventura by ourselves, and you know I thought it was like okay. I thought it was pretty good, right?
Yeah.
I think this movie was like this. This is the movie that definitely proved that Jim Carrey definitely has what it takes to be a leading star. And sure, that's like I like this movie. Let me just put this. I like it a lot better than I did Ace Ventura. That's for sure.
Nice, nice.
I mean, I like Ace Ventura, but I think this movie definitely proved what he's capable of, and capable of in a better way. It showed like his obviously it showed his physical acting prowess in a way that Ace Ventura didn't allow. Like, actually had and this movie actually had him gave him a little bit of pathos too. Like, it shows that he can be like both funny, serious, and a little bit heart-wrenching at the same time. All the while proving that, like, yes, Jim Carrey is basically a living cartoon character. So I think this movie is like out of the two I've seen for this year so far, this definitely lives up to at least at the time his strengths most. Like, and I thought the movie I'm not going to share the same time as that. Obviously, you can tell like the movies are made with like 90s CG, so obviously it doesn't always age well. But as far as the mask effects go, the mask effects are fantastic.
Well, that's mostly what I'm saying is the way that, I mean, to me it looks about as good as like something like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, as far as like integrating like a cartoony element into a very gritty setting. So yeah.
But the actual CG, yeah, you can definitely tell that was 90s CG.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't take away from that. Doesn't I don't think I think that actually kind of watching it obviously 30 years later kind of adds more onto that surreal element to it if you think about it, if you ask me. So who knows? Maybe that's a thing that I'd have a different appreciation of it if I had grown up with it. But I think it just adds another kind of surreal quality to it. And not to mention, I like the story. Like the story, the characters, everything was great. Everything really popped about this movie. If anything, it definitely kept me entertained.
All right, Dragon, you probably, I'm willing to guess, have the most conventional relationship with this movie. So why don't you tell us about it?
Wait, most conventional.
In the fact that you probably didn't think that Jim Carrey was a demon hellspawn when you were a kid, all right?
Well, you're right about that, yes. So,
that's all I'm saying, Dragon.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Right,
I was terrified of this man for multiple years of my childhood. I really was.
Right, so yeah, I have and I've always had off the charts nostalgia for this film. This was my introduction to Jim Carrey. Looking back, this is still possibly, I think in my heart of hearts I've always felt this way, but looking back on it, for our purposes here, still the definitive Jim Carrey movie for me. It has to be. This is like, this kind of is. I mean, one, it's a great.
How dare you bespeech the name of Mr. Popper's Penguins, Dragon?
I think you're looking for besmirch, but
yeah. I'm sorry. How dare you speak ill of Mr. Popper's Penguins, the definitive movie in Jim Carrey's career? All right, obviously I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, this is one. It's a great adaptation, despite tonally being way different than the source material. So already it's impressive on that level. But this movie, it's.
If I remember correctly, one of the creators actually loved this take on the character.
That's what I heard. One of the creators. I don't know. I forget.
Mike Richardson specifically said he loved the adaptation.
Sure. Well, I'm saying he was also the producer on the movie, so you would hope he would like the adaptation.
For all we know, that could just be like an honorary producer.
Well, it's also the thing. Like, here's the thing: it's kind of hard to tell because Mike Richardson, he basically runs Dark Horse. He's essentially, the head cheese at Dark Horse. So it's kind of like his name has to be on it. So it's kind of hard to. But I mean, look, everything I've ever heard from interviews, he really liked the movie. So I'm just saying, like the actual creators, I'm not really, not 100% sure how they feel about it, but. I know one of them went on to write an episode of the animated series, but so I mean, I like to think that that's a good sign. Okay, anyway, so yeah, this movie it's hilarious. The effects still hold up. It's insanely fun yet simple, and it's a Jim Carrey movie for everyone. In that, yes, we have both sides of the man. We see the wild, rubber-faced, cartoony man. And on the flip side, we have a little bit like an air of like just enough to show you like a proof of concept that Jim Carrey can do drama and do pathos and
Mhm.
present, like leading man, potentially even before. It's the fact that we have this movie and we build to the mask. We don't just like start the mask out the gates. It's not even like, I mean, I don't know. It might be a little after the 20-minute mark.
It's about the 20-minute point.
Yeah, there you go.
It's about 20 minutes in.
And that's fair. That's kind of like showing that, okay, Carrey does have the chops to hold your attention and as a fail-safe. Like, okay, you don't have to wait too long to get to the mask, but I think still there's enough there to show you that you're going to care about this guy who's putting on this mask, and you'll be able to connect the dots story-wise that you need to. So,
I mean, again, I think it's fair to say that Stanley Ipkiss, like being written how he is one of this movie's secret ingredients.
I do have there is one very interesting thing about Stanley Ipkiss I do want to mention. I'm going to wait till we actually get into the conversation to talk about when we talk about Stanley. But, yes, so I am. So again, I was obsessed with this movie as a kid. I had the VHS tape. I loved it. And eventually, I got the DVD, which essentially is our image here. The big thing I was obsessed with. I was. I just always got so excited every time I saw they're so rare and far between. I would see merchandise for the mask and years, probably like 10 years or so down the line. That's when I was really starting to actually stumble upon the merch. I wasn't there when the merch was first out, but it was there when it was starting to become like, hey, here's something you don't see every day. It's from the mask. It was like a thing where you felt like, does no one else like this movie as much as I do? It was like, it seemed like the mask ultimately seemed to be kind of like a fad that got overshadowed by all the other Jim Carrey movies that subsequently came out.
I feel like The Mask is like for a very specific age group. It is like not only the Jim Carrey movie, but more like the 90s comedy. Like it looms large for a very specific generation of people. But you're right. I do think that Jim Carrey's more cerebral stuff kind of does overshadow it nowadays.
Yeah, and for me too, it was just like there's so much fun. There's the fact that you had Jim Carrey, then you had like this iconography of it's like Jim Carrey with this this green face, this living cartoon thing, and then you have this, and then the fact that there was a cartoon blew my mind as a kid connecting that. I was obsessed with this movie, and there's an animated series attached to it too, and I remember
it's like the opposite Beetlejuice for me. I really liked the Beetlejuice cartoon as a kid, and I was like, "Oh my god, there's a live action movie!"
Exactly. So and
also, I've always thought that Cuban Pete and Deo were kind of like spiritual cousins to each other as far as set pieces go.
Yeah. Anyway, so I remember hunting down the Mask, the animated Mask animated series VHS tapes, because those were like the rarest finds for me. Of course, now this is before the advent really of YouTube, because YouTube now you can just pretty much find them all on there, or find them.
I had the same experience with finding VHS tapes of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show Dragon.
Yeah, but still though, it was like an event where they had only a select few episodes. It was like, oh my god! I remember one time I got one that had a region problem or something, where it was I finally got I got the one. I had 3 tapes I had in my hands. I think there's 5 or 6 in total. So I had 3 tapes. I had to track down painstakingly to get them.
Oh my god!
And then there was the 4th one, which is the split personality episode, where they had the cool concept and the cool cover, which is basically the mask got split in half, so you have the big duality shot of half of the face is the mask, half the face is Ipkiss in horror of the mask.
Oh my god!
So it was just this insane. Again, I had these the first time I was able to watch these episodes. Oh my god, I have to get this to find out. I finally got the tape, and it was a region thing where you get it from the wrong regions, not stateside. It won't play. It's no, why? No.
That's it. You can tug up to the Mask's mischief, Dragon.
Sure. The mischief, yeah.
Yeah, that's the word for it.
Yeah. Anyway, so again, point being, I've always been head over heels for the Mask. A huge attachment for it. And I was there when Son of the Mask was in theaters, and I left unfulfilled, but I saw it.
Yeah. Kogios says Son of the Mask turns 20 next year, so let's do a video on that in 2025. Probably not, Kogios. That's probably not going to happen.
I was at the
Probably.
Phantom Menace thing too, where I initially was like convincing myself, "Well, it wasn't that bad, was it?" It's like you saw, like, yeah.
I like parts of Phantom Menace, but I feel like the internet has had enough Phantom Menace discussion. We really don't need to.
No. I mean, Son of the Mask is in comparison to Phantom Menace.
Oh, got it. Okay.
As in, like, it was like that phenomenon with Phantom Menace, where a lot of people,
right,
they went to see it and they had to convince themselves that they liked it just to preserve their own.
I didn't even go to see it, man. I was like, let's see, that came out in 2005, so I must have been like 14 when that came out. And even back then, as like a 14-year-old, I knew it looked like shit. I knew it looked
that
like
was the thing. It was
garbage.
less discerning taste. It was more just the fact of, like, I've been so starved for, like, oh my god, the mask is back. And yes, it's not Jim Carrey, but the concept of the mask does not necessitate Jim Carrey technically. So this is not a deal breaker. I mean, you want it clearly, but still, it is an interesting idea that we're going to keep.
It necessitates a stronger lead actor than
it does. It does. That's the thing. It's the interesting thing of, like, well, look, obviously we would love Jim Carrey, but the premise of that, yes.
As I say, the funny thing is, I actually saw the Son of the Mask on TV before I saw this.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh man, that is crazy.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Well, there you go.
Right.
Anyway, again, love the original.
What I mean is, like, I saw this like shortly after it came out, like many years ago, and then now I'm just watching this.
Yep.
So basically, long overdue.
All right.
Okay, really quick. We also got Little Blue, aka Eli, in the comments. He really wanted to come on for this, but we already established the whole dynamic with Jacob not seeing these movies and kind of having the fresh perspective. So apologies on that again, Little Blue, but happy to have you in the chat, of course. He says, for those of you who do or do not know, The Mask came from the Dark Horse comics, which also is the home of Mystery Men and Hellboy.
Fun fact about Mystery Men, by the way, maybe a little known fact. All Star came from was written for that movie.
Interesting. That I think I did hear about that. Yeah, that it's really funny because obviously people associate it very hard with Shrek, but yeah.
But it's not even the fact of just like a song that was just happening and it was put in the movie. From what I understand, that was written for that movie.
Right. It was like on the soundtrack and everything. Yeah.
Obviously, a great song and does fit that movie, but it clearly, as the tomes of history have proven, Shrek yet again is the victor.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Kogias is vouching for the Grinch or Batman Forever. The Grinch, honestly, might be one of the few that I could think maybe has a chance to compete with this. Is like the definitive Carrey performance. I don't know.
For a lot, I think people might make the argument for the Riddler and Batman Forever. Not now. I'm saying at a certain
I'm not a big. Y'all know I'm not a big Batman Forever fan. I will take Batman and Robin any day.
I just mean like at a certain point in time I think at a certain point in time, Batman Forever was maybe a lot of people's answer to that.
No, like Jim Carrey's fine in Batman Forever. I don't think it's his best role by any means, but he's fine in it. And I usually love Tommy Lee Jones, but my God, does Tommy Lee Jones just absolutely fucking tank that movie?
Yeah, and Tiki, I've told you this. Like Tommy Lee Jones, he hated Jim Carrey.
Oh, he couldn't stand Jim Carrey. Yeah, I know.
You heard the story, right? He walked like Jim Carrey, like waved hi to him at like lunch one time. Like him, be chummy with him, and he stood up like shaking with anger, and he was a really intense thing of like I basically it's pretty much verbatim almost like I hate you.
All right,
and anyway.
Little Blues also saying the Phantom Menace was brought up. Since the Phantom Menace was brought up, Warwick Davis's wife passed away. Just thought I'd mention that. So yeah, that's sad. That's sad,
yeah.
Good to acknowledge that, I guess. Kogias actually raises an interesting question that we can kind of use as a jumping off point for the discussion. I know we need to get into backstory and everything too, but he says some people consider The Mask a superhero film. Do you think that it actually counts? Dragon, I think there's only one way to determine this, all right?
Okay.
Has Cap done a rewind on it?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, then it counts. It counts. He's the authority as far as I'm concerned.
I think the clincher for that mostly was like the marketing and like the subtitle. Well, it's not a subtitle. Like the big tagline for the mask is from zero to hero. So, and we do have the line in the movie, a superhero, but
Oh my god.
and now it is time to pay PARTY. Why? Because we gotta.
Yeah.
All right. Little Blue's asking about comparisons between the Mask and Deadpool. Dragon, do you want to speak on that, or do you want to save that for later? I don't know if you have much to say about that.
I mean, I guess we'll talk. Don't wait till after the backstory.
Okay. Let's get to the backstory. Go ahead.
All right. So, as I'm sure our audience here knows, the Mask started as a Dark Horse comic, and I want to say it started in '87. I don't know if he just had like a brief appearance, and then we gave him his miniseries. But essentially, the Mask was kind of like an early flagship title for Dark Horse. It was a big one for him. Basically, it was like a dark revenge comic. It was written by, I believe, Doug Mankey and John Arcudi or Cuddy. And essentially, it was the premise that we see before us. The guy finds a mask. Stan Liebkis was the first guy in the comic to find the mask, puts it on. Seemingly goes the way the movie starts here. Only his initial revenge, like the night one of the mask, all those people meet an abysmal graphic end.
So just a slight difference, just a slight variation.
Basically, it's the Zack Snyder version of the mask.
Doesn't he literally like chop them into little pieces with an axe or something crazy like that?
Yes. Well, okay. So here's the big difference between the Mask comic and the Mask movies. In the Mask comic, especially in that first miniseries, the other ones were like this too. But then the movie happened, and they kind of altered things in the comic slightly. But the original genesis for this, it's the same cartoony physics, only in the real world in terms of if someone had these cartoony abilities and they were unhinged and they were seeking revenge. It would basically be people dying in the most horrific ways possible, thanks to cartoony methods like death by hammer space or death by cartoon character with a big axe. So stuff like, for example, the mechanics. They get the mechanics get mufflers shoved up where the sun don't shine, but in the comic, it's like you see the aftermath where it's like, okay, if you shove like a giant cartoony muffler up somebody, you have a guy who's like in the shape, a dead man in the shape of a muffler, because it's like it's in his body.
Oh god.
Like that's not like, oh, someone called a proctol. It's not like that's ha ha. But this is like, no, like dead corpses, just like with machine parts, like taking the shape of their bodies. So cartoony death. You follow me? Anyway, so we got a few mini-series. It was kind of honestly, it started off as kind of like a trilogy of stories. Like it did kind of continue the narrative, and like who would get the mask next, sort of thing. There are a lot of influences for the character. I mean, it's kind of a combination of a number of things. Jekyll and Hyde, as you can probably imagine. Freddy Krueger, which does pay off hugely for how we get this movie in the first place. The Joker, in terms of kind of the manic, violent, and yet kind of charismatic nature. And the Creeper. A lot of Steve Ditko's The Creeper, hence the color scheme. So, New Line Cinema, this is kind of post the major success of Nightmare on Elm Street, particularly the third one. They take an interest in the book. They're kind of thinking, hey, we're doing great with Freddy Krueger. We need kind of another Freddy Krueger in our back pocket. So,
oh, man.
So that's the thing. So
there was interest. 4-year-old Tiki.
Hey, Tiki, you want a balloon animal? We have.
Dude, I've never trusted this fucker from the jump, man.
Anyway, so seriously though, the mask was intended to be the next slasher in terms of like what the premise was for like, hey, Mike DeLuca took some interest in there, one of the producers. He was looking for basically a cartoony version of Freddy Krueger. The third Nightmare on Elm Street had a lot more comedy infused in it. So the logic was, hey, let's offer the guy who made us a buttload of money on the third Nightmare on Elm Street, which was a massive success and a lot of people still favorite to this day. Let's get Chuck Russell, the director of that, to direct this. So they did. They reached out to him, and he said, he's read through it, and he kind of realized, you know what? I mean, there seems to be more opportunity here to do it as a comedy than just to do it as like kind of like a dime a dozen slasher with a cartoony, like a Roger Rabbit gimmick. It just seemed like there's a little bit more there. Like it'll be a flash in the pan if we used to. Hey, do you remember that the R-rated version of Cool World?
Okay, it'd be like Happy Time Murders. It'd be exactly like Happy Time Murders.
Yeah, like sadly, yeah, Happy Time Murders would be the
Happy Time Murders is like the ultimate example of like a cool concept. Not much more than that.
So essentially, Chuck Russell had two things that kind of like the movie was shelved, or at least like it was developed very slowly after this point. Chuck Russell, he said, I want to make it a comedy and I want Jim Carrey in it. Jim Carrey, this is before Ace Ventura. This was very much, again, Jim Carrey was the white guy in Living Color. That was the shorthand for who Jim Carrey was. Every studio at the time that put up all three of these 90s movies, mind you, all of them were made before Ace Ventura came out, or at least before Ace Ventura was seen, any way you slice it. So it was like, hey, this guy's untested, he's a big risk, he's like the one, he's a funny guy from In Living Color. That's the only big credit that he had aside from a number of like not so well performing performances, like he was like the extra in this, or like like he had like a failed TV pilot, stuff like that.
Right.
So anyway, so they do some drafts of the script. They're they're with the more horrific slasher version of the character. It's still missing something. They studio mentality. You know what? Let's call Chuck Russell. What was that good idea? What was that good idea we liked so much? The comedy. Let's do that. So everyone trusted Chuck Russell. I mean, Chuck Russell, he went to Jim Carrey. They very much trust each other, which is why we had all the improv in the movie. The studio trusted Chuck Russell because he made him a huge success with with Freddy Krueger, with the third one. And I was like, okay, so they kind of had everything going. Cameron Diaz, this is her first role. She was what the industry calls an ingenue. Yeah. This was New Line's biggest budget. Because remember, New Line always started off as like a low-budget operation. Then Krueger kind of made him more and more money as time went on. But this was still like the biggest thing because all the effects. This was like the biggest budget that they had, and yet still just an $18 million budget. That's not a lot. So this movie with all its effects and everything, impressively made for $18 million, when at the time your budget for a movie like this would be $60 to $70 million. So again, this is kind of, in many respects, this is kind of the Deadpool in terms of like we're making this movie on a very minimal budget, but still kind of trusting the creatives that be to kind of deliver on the material and our adaptation. Jim Carrey's his rubber face comedy definitely helped with the effects. Again, this is ILM. It kind of in their beginnings. This is like a year after Jurassic Park. Well, they're still probably working on Jurassic Park, frankly. So, anyway, end result, big it's pretty solid success. There was a attempt to do a sequel, which led to some very. Did you ever hear about the infamous thing that happened in the announcement of the sequel?
Oh, are you talking about the contest?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I honestly think AVGN covered that at one point.
So for those who don't know, The Mask did have a pretty good tie-in game, from what I remember. At least a very popular tie-in game. Whether it was good or not, only the Angry Video Game Nerd could probably tell you. But there was an attempt to do a sequel, and they were very sure because again it was a success. New Line definitely loved franchising things. It's like, hey, we're going to do another Mask movie, and we don't know what it's called yet. We just know it's like Mask 2. We did like a Nintendo sweepstakes, and essentially, hey, you enter into this, we'll put you in like a cameo in the movie, like a role in the movie. And Jim Carrey bowed out of the sequel very instantly, and they were pretty much stuck with it. So they had a sweepstakes winner, and they had to buy him off with prizes and cash money. Then, of course, we had an animated series and eventually Son of the Mask, and that's all we're going to say about that. Okay.
All right. All right. So, where do we want to start with this?
Well, one thing I want to hit before we get into it, just because it's going to go by real fast. The opening of this movie originally was a prologue. The prologue was Vikings. We saw Leif Erikson of all, literally that Leif Erikson.
Happy Leif Erikson Day.
So Leif Erikson. We saw originally we were supposed to see Leif Erikson like dumping, or I guess burying, and then over time would have risen to like under the water, basically bury the Mask in Edge City, like way back in the olden days, and that's how the crate got there. So again, the whole Norse tie-in there. So anyways, just wanted to mention that real quick because we have no other place to put it.
Kind of funny that they also kind of use that for the alternate opening of Atlantis: The Lost Empire.
Yeah, we like Norse people burying stuff, apparently.
Well, it was less bearing, more like they got attacked by Atlanteans, basically.
Right. Okay, so Little Blue wants to talk about this. We'll talk about this, then we'll get into
Okay.
things. So yeah, I mean, the Mask does have some similarities to Deadpool, and I think Death Battles had a wonderful kind of answer to this thing. We had like the Mask versus Deadpool. It's really funny. I'd recommend people check it out.
I mean, very much kind of like the similarity point for me is just the fact that he is very much like self-aware of the fact that he's, not of this world to a certain extent. I don't know if I'm putting that right.
Yeah,
it's just the self-awareness of the absurdity of the situation, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I'm saying you have like a cartoon character, essentially a living. You have a human person, using all these cartoony things. I mean, they're very aware they're in a medium that would allow this.
It's like, when I saw that Stanley was a fan of cartoons, like he's a man after my own heart.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of interesting parallels between Deadpool and the Mask. Because one, they're both kind of even in this movie, very much in the anti-hero space. Because even though he calls himself, he posits being a superhero. What's the first thing he does? Not very heroic. He's seeking revenge. Deadpool, the movie itself, kind of is a revenge movie. The first one. Again, there are a lot of similarities just in terms of in terms of what this film is, and this is very much. I mean, not until we get some of the Mask. Even Deadpool got a sequel, obviously. There's very much kind of almost a standalone kind of film that then does well and then gets another movie, and is very much just kind of like we're scrimping by and delivering something really impressive and really indelible,
right?
And taking a gamble on kind of our our star and our cachet for our source material here, and it's a very kind of like '90s adaptation of a very kind of adapting a 90s character, I should say. The Mask did the full story was told in 91. So the Mask is really kind of fully okay, this is what this is. This is getting notoriety in 91. And the movie gets made a couple of years later. So it's a fresh kind of adaptation of the comic. But the point being, though, again, you have characters that can be very violent or at the very least over the top and hilarious. So that's the main kind of Deadpool comparison, I'd say. So there are some shades there, but yeah.
Alrighty.
Okay. So Stanley Ipkiss, I think the heart of the movie, we got to talk about Stanley Ipkiss.
I feel like he's like a far better version of Brendan Fraser's character from fucking Monkey Bone. I mean, am I wrong? Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. I never really thought of it, so I mean, I guess.
They're both like socially inept cartoonists.
Yeah. No, for sure. Here's the wonderful thing about Stanley. Here's why I think this adds the specialness of this movie with Jim Carrey. Why one of the reasons the definitive Jim Carrey movie. The special thing about this character, from what I understand, basically Jim Carrey's playing his father in this role. Percy Carey, who was very much the definitive nice guy finishing last. He was the poster child for nice guy finishing last. The family struggled. He always had good humor, smile on his face. Made great sacrifices for the family, stuff like that, encouraged his son to pursue his dreams. Jim Carrey's father meant a great deal to him. And, of course, there's kind of an arc with the movies that we're talking about, with the 90s here. Because by the third one, he has the $10 million check that he buried with his father as a tribute to him. So I think this movie is very special, and I think that's kind of the secret ingredient to why this character works the way he does. That's where all the pathos is coming from. He's playing all the strife that he's seen his father go through all these years as this insanely likable, funny guy you can't help but fall in love with.
Sure.
Root for. And otherwise, because again, Ipkiss in the comic, not that this thing's going for direct parallels, very clear, but you still have the same starting place if you have kind of seemingly kind of a loser of a character who has aspirations to get revenge and cartoony methods. And that could be like George Costanza without the charm. It could be just a really
oh God.
It could be a menacing George Costanza if you're not
menacing George Costanza. Oh man.
Yeah.
By the way, Dragon, do you think it'd be worth it for me to binge some Seinfeld seasons? I've been kind of considering that.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt.
All right, I'm just wondering how much I would actually get out of it. But
at the very least, watch season 4 of Seinfeld.
What is season 4 in particular?
Well, season 4, honestly, that was the big breakthrough season. A lot of the iconic episodes. But the big thing is that's the meta season where they're making the show in the show. That's where they're
gotcha. Okay, yeah. Because I don't know. It's Seinfeld is one of. I don't mean to get too off topic, folks. We'll get back to it soon. But Seinfeld is one of those things where it's like I will watch it like every so often if it's on TV and there's nothing else on. But I've never actually like sat down and binged it. So yeah, with Curb being done, it definitely does.
Well,
kind of
the
spark my curiosity a little bit.
Well, 4 is the perfect season for it because that's the meta season. So basically, it's like again the character who's based off Larry David pitching Seinfeld to the network with Jerry.
Well, I mean that's the thing is that now that I have the knowledge that George Costanza basically represents Larry David, I feel like that is going to just significantly improve Seinfeld for me. Just that little piece of information in my head.
There you go. Yeah. All right, so Stanley in the movie's getting walked all over by people. He's a people pleaser, which I'm sure connected to you, Tiki.
Yeah, no, for sure. Totally relatable. Honestly, the people pleaser thing is just one of those things I still struggle with. I really don't think I'm ever going to grow out of it.
Tell me that ticket scene didn't remember unthaw a tear from frozen from years back for you. Just the idea of like he gets the 2 tickets and he's like, oh, my girlfri's coming in the town. It's like, oh. You just take it. It's okay. Just
right.
When I saw that scene, I was just like, you bitch.
So with that in mind, I do want to address. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not crazy about Cameron Diaz's character in this movie. I think she's basically just eye candy, and that's really about it. I don't really think she's written all that well. I actually like the reporter character, and I kind of ship her and Stanley, but that doesn't really work out. I don't know.
Oddly, it works out in the cartoon. The cartoon, they completely forgot about that plot twist, so she's the recurring female in the cartoon.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, I can sign off on that, because honestly, she sees Stanley for who he is, and Stanley, he sees Cameron Diaz as a piece of eye candy, and that's really about it.
Okay, a couple things here. Okay, so with Peggy, the reporter, fun fact. The reason that plot twist happens, it's 2 reasons. Okay, 1, Chuck Russell never liked Lois Lane.
Oh, God.
That's the main reason that's in there. Second reason, the plot reason for it is he wanted to earn basically the moral of the movie, which is, it's Ibkiss, not the mask. And to do that, he wanted to basically kind of diffuse the whole, he literally had a red herring in the movie. The whole thing, we have a girl that seems perfect for Stanley, she'll exposit the moral, but, we're going to show you, she's as bent as everyone else in Edge City.
Yeah.
So, again, it's kind of...
Mookie Nuts is agreeing with me that Cameron Diaz... And it's like, I appreciate Cameron Diaz in other things, and this is obviously her first role. Yeah. Like I said, my main issue with her as a character in this movie is that she basically does just exist to be eye candy, which is a very dated 90s way to write your female characters.
Okay, here's the thing with Cameron Diaz. All right, so... Oh, yes?
I didn't say anything.
Okay. So here's the thing with Cameron Diaz. She's very much intended to be, as we see her role in the movie, she's the femme fatale, or at least we think that we initially associating with the femme fatale. She's basically, she's the Red Hot Riding Hood from the Tex Avery cartoon. She's the the club act that our Tex Avery Wolf is going to go nuts for. and I think there's not a lot. I don't think we're supposed to overthink her that much there. I mean, we're supposed to just
the problem with the femme fatale thing is that I think generally with femme fatales, they have a little bit more complexity to them than the Cameron Diaz character does, if that makes sense.
Well, yes, but think about this though. We have the inkling there that, okay, she just fell in with the wrong crowd. I'm not disagreeing that we could have developed her more, but even what we do have, you kind of see the hint of, okay, she's a little bit more than just her. She's a little bit more than just her looks. Like you see, even though she is enacting the bad guy's plan, she's falling for the charms of it because she does kind of fall for the nice guy finishing last. There's some chemistry there.
Uh-huh.
When the big scene, I think it's kind of really nice. I like it's communicated without really spelling it out. Stanley's bad night at the Coca Cabana. Sorry, so the Coco Bongo, which is modeled after the Coco Cabana. Sorry.
Yes.
But yes, the Coco Bongo, which, by the way, in the animated series, he's obsessed with the Coco Bongo. He loves that place.
That's awesome.
The Coco Bongo gets destroyed and he loses it on the bad guy. He's very upset.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so You know, the scene where, with the Studebaker basically stole Fozzie Bear's car, the loner.
Alone.
It feels like it's from the 70s without it's breaking down.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so, the moment there where he's trying to save face in front of her, and she's in this beautiful dress. Her fashion's great in this movie, I must say that. All of her dresses are stunning. But there's that scene where, they're having that moment outside the club, and she's kind of charmed that, oh, he's trying to play it cool right now. But, there's sympathy without being like callous pity. It's not like a mocking sort of thing. You see, she still kind of likes him despite his embarrassing setback here.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's an inkling of something there, and I think it does work out. But you're right.
I don't think she is a component of the movie that actively hurts it at all. I just think she doesn't really add a lot, is what I'm saying. So
sure.
It is what it is. It's kind of a wash.
Okay, to your Dick Tracy point from earlier, yeah, I love the atmosphere of this film. I love.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is a lot seedier than I remember it from when I was a kid.
Think about this. It's by day, it's 80s, or I guess maybe early 90s. Mostly it's 80s New York, and by night, it's beautiful 40s, like Vegas almost. It's it's the lighting. Also, I want to highlight.
Not to mention the villains being literal gangsters.
Yeah, I like how that works. Let me put it this way: I like how that works, but I do feel there is a missed opportunity with Dorian. We don't need our mobsters to be super developed here, but it feels like we have it. It's there. We just didn't connect. We didn't connect the thread where it's okay, Dorian puts on the mask by the end, and he becomes a big bad gangster. And we saw with the golf scene, okay, he's really a small little guy in the mob world who owns a nightclub. He's basically the Penguin from season 1 of Gotham. That's essentially who he is, and he's. And by how twisted and Dick Tracy is that golf scene? You gotta hold the little, the little golf pick in your mouth. He's gonna hit the golf tee. But he's a small little mob guy. He's a big bad monster, and it feels like the line we should be connecting is he feels kind of small and walked all over like Stanley Ipkiss, and it feels like maybe we could have connected that. I'm not saying we need a big speech moment between the two of them, but it just feels like maybe we could have made a hair more apparent that that's what they're going for, Yeah.
Another thing with me that I thought was a little bit of a missed opportunity with him is just the fact that, when he puts on the mask, he just kind of stands around menacingly. Mm-hmm. And, I totally get the logic of, he's not going to turn into a cartoon character like Ipkiss. I get that. I'm not saying that. But still, it's we see so much creative shit come out of the Ipkiss version of the mask. And this guy, like I said, he's just standing there most of the time. They don't really utilize the concept.
It's the Green Lantern principle. If you have Green Lantern just making very standard stuff, you're not really using it right. You're not using the ring right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Where it's the most he did the cool thing where he absorbed the bullets and he shot them out, which is a cool gag, but it's that's about it.
Yeah, basically, he didn't even really do much in the finale. He got tricked by I want to give you a kiss.
Yeah.
So and you know what? That is one of the few things that I will give Son of the Mask. Is that Son of the Mask at least takes full advantage of the whole idea that multiple people are wearing the mask.
Yes.
I will give it that.
At least we did get Milo wearing the mask in this movie.
And can we just talk about how great of a movie dog Milo is? Seriously, Jesus Christ, what an icon.
The dog's name in real life was Max, so it's Jim Carrey.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
A green Jim Carrey working with the Max the dog.
So it's prophetic in some way.
Yep, Nostradamus.
I saw a comment once that said he kept the dog afterwards, but I don't know how true that actually is.
I don't know how true that is either, because the dog, but anyway, the dog had had a mother that was a stand-in, so I don't know what happened to both the dog and its mother, but they were in show business.
But I did know that, but I did hear that they had that the dog and Jim had at least bonded very much on the set.
Yeah,
okay, Dragon, here's a deep cut that I'm sure you're going to appreciate, all right?
All right.
I don't know for a fact, but you would think, I am 90% sure that this dog probably got paraded around the the Universal Studios Animal Stars show, at least on a few occasions, right? You would think so.
You would think so, yeah.
Yeah, they'd be a prime candidate for that.
I mean, the only tricky thing there is we'll have to have New Line where it would have been. I don't know if it would have made it there though, because it's technically like a New Line movie, which eventually gets bought by Warner Brothers. But that's
I don't necessarily think. I would have to go back and look. I don't necessarily think that mattered that much when it came to Universal.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is like at that time, I think it probably would have been fine. So you might be anyway.
And I mean, keep in mind, Harry Potter is Warner Brothers, and Harry Potter, for better or for worse, is one of the biggest things Universal has going right now. So.
I would say on the better side for that one.
Well, Jacob, you know what I don't dislike the franchise itself, but I do dislike the creator. That's all I will say about that. I don't want to get into like a whole political tangent with that, but the creator's kind of a piece of shit. I will put it that way.
And I will say, and before that, I was like, no, she's not. But moving on.
I don't want to get into it. All right,
let's move on.
I strongly think she is, but whatever. Anyways.
Okay, Dragon.
Politics! Aren't politics fun, boys and girls?
Dragon,
did we lose it? Did we lose you? Holy shit.
All right, so where were we?
Dragon, are you there? I think we genuinely lost him.
I don't know. I don't think it was anything we did. He might be having technical problems.
That's just funny, though. The minute fucking Potter discourse gets brought into the conversation. Oh boy!
All right. So, it's definitely.
Dragon really didn't want to get political. Yeah, Kogias, it appears that way. Yeah.
Well, in this case, I think it's just technical issues.
All right.
So I was like,
okay. So where are we? What do we want to cover?
So I think the last time I remember we were talking about the dog and like how he's being paraded around Universal. Might have been paraded around Universal.
Well, he might have been. I was kind of joking about that. I would like to think that at some point he was at the Universal show.
Dragon, what do you think?
Oh dear!
Fantastic.
Wow. Okay, Rolling did like a fucking killing curse on Dragon's internet connection, dude. She's vengeful towards him because he's the neutral party, and in her mind, that's just as bad. God, all right.
Okay.
Christ.
All right then.
Okay. So, anyone have any comments? Anyone have any thoughts on The Mask that you would like to get out there? Because honestly, I don't want to get too deep into the other stuff without Dragon.
I'd like to talk about the dog if
Yeah, go ahead, Jacob. Go ahead, by all means.
I mean, we're not getting too much into the movie itself, obviously. Like the dog is definitely like one of the better animal actors I've seen in movies, and to be quite honest. I mean, you could always tell like what he's thinking, what he's doing, like what exactly is going on. And I don't know. He just seemed like more expertly trained than a lot of other animal actors I've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, you could actually like believe him when he's like, and of course when he gets taken over by the Mask, that was a lot of fun too.
Right.
CG Kogia says Peter Rygaard is the unsung hero of the film.
Yeah, we should probably talk about some of the side characters here because I do think they do add some flavor for sure. Let's see. So Rygaard plays Kellaway. Now Dragon, I know that Dragon could probably talk on this of. I know that Kellaway is a pretty major factor in the cartoon as well. So that's a cool kind of carryover between the cartoon. Kellaway almost kind of like a more antagonistic, but still kind of on the side of leaning good version of Gordon.
Yeah. And of course his partnership with Doyle.
Yeah. Dragon, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, Dragon Skype me if there's anything you want us to like avoid talking about when you're not in the room. All right, I don't know.
Oh God.
This is usually this sort of issue with his connection comes before we start the show. So, I mean, I know it. I know exactly the kind of issue he's having. It's just, I frankly, when this has happened in the past, it's taken him a while. So I don't know if he's going to be able to get back on before we have to wrap up, Jacob. I don't know. We're in kind of like a weird, tricky sort of middle ground here.
Like, how much longer do we have?
Well, I mean, I need to wrap up in an hour, but I'd preferably like to be done, sooner than that, just because I don't want this to go like start getting redundant and repetitive.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and hop on Skype and ask him if there's anything he wants us to say for him.
Dragon?
Yeah, this is not great.
And now he's gone again. Well, anyway. I don't know. We're trying not to have dead air here, but I don't know what to bring up at this point.
Well, you did mention. Let's mention some of the side characters. Do you have anything to say about Calloway?
Calloway was like kind of this interesting and he was like out to figure out who the mask is. Probably had it out for Stanley from the very beginning, especially so like your pajamas are a mystery.
Uh-huh.
It's like the Calloway was kind of an interesting.
That was a good little flag that got planted with Calloway.
It's like you think it's just like a throwaway line or a joke about what Stanley's wearing, but no, it actually ends up being a vital clue later. To maybe this Stanley character is actually the mask.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Doyle being his almost incompetent sidekick.
Let's see. The other person I do want to talk about is I do like Ben Stein had a funny cameo. I do like Ben Stein in this movie.
And I do remember reading that he actually carried over his only one of the few actors to carry over into the animated series as well. Like he voiced the same character in the animated series.
Uh-huh.
It's like he voiced the same character, and in one episode he even got a hold of the mask itself.
Then also, I want to highlight Richard Janey as Charlie, just because I feel like he brings kind of like almost like a little bit of a Joe Pesci energy to his role. I like him. I think he's enjoyable.
And not to mention those body shop guys
Uh-huh.
who end up with a tailpipe in their tailpipe.
Right. Okay, Dragon is saying avoid the Coco Bongo dance. Man. The thing is, I really don't know how much more, like, we're basically like stretching for stuff as it is.
Yeah, without getting into the movie itself.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, he said talk about the makeup and effects, which, I mean...
Kind of...
Yeah, I feel like we've already kind of done that.
I guess especially considering like the actual makeup and prosthetic teeth, like how Jim Carrey learned to talk with those fake teeth. I
will say that, like, without the context that this is a comedy, it does look a little alarming. I mean, I'm not surprised that as a kid I was scared by him.
So guess I'll find out Ben Stein's the only actor that's in both Mask films.
Ben Stein is such an enigma. Can we just talk about Ben Stein until Dragon gets back?
I mean, oh yes, let's talk about Ben Stein.
Do you remember the game show Win Ben Stein's Money?
Yes.
Yes. Man.
It's like always his dry sense of humor and all that.
Uh-huh.
I specifically remember seeing this one where it's like what object was tied to Ben Franklin's kite?
Oh man.
And the contestant said it's satellite dish. He's like, what do you kind of think? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, he was actually in a lot more than I realized. I mean, damn, he was pretty prominent in the 90s.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Well, that's probably his most famous role, yeah.
Bueller.
Hercules. I forgot he was in Hercules. Oh man.
Which Hercules?
Oh, email me the link quick. Okay. All right. I think the movie.
I didn't think he was in that. All right.
I don't think he was either. Maybe the TV series. Okay, Dragon says email me the link quick. So, folks, thank you for putting up with these tech issues. I will hopefully get Dragon on the call again.
Apparently, he voiced Trivia in Hercules.
Yeah.
Like the character known as Trivia. So it's kind of funny considering.
I don't even remember that character.
It was like he was in the animated series.
Oh, it was an animated series appearance. Okay, got it. That makes sense.
It kind of makes sense considering how he usually is. It makes sense for him to voice a character like Trivia.
Uh-huh.
And it's actually, hey, his birthday's a day before mine.
Oh, nice. That's funny.
Dragon?
Okay, wait, there he is.
Hello.
Hey, okay. Hey. Thank God. Oh my God. Dragon, we were fucking drowning, dude.
Okay,
we were talking about Ben Stein.
Okay, good.
We were literally going through Ben Stein's filmography.
All right.
No, the only thing I forgot to mention was the Pixies and Fairly Odd Parents.
Right.
Oh man. All right. Anyways.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dragon, did the Potter discourse scare you off?
I mean, I wasn't thrilled. I was trying to change the subject while you two were, while you two were being childish, but you know.
Well, I mean, I think you're having issues before that happened.
Well, no, I was trying to change the subject, and I couldn't.
Well, the thing is, we didn't even hear you try and change the subject.
I know that's exactly that's what I'm saying. When I'm trying, that's when it happened.
All right. Anyways, guys, let's not jinx it again. Let's just move forward. So, right. Dragon, you specifically wanted to talk about the Coco Cabana scene.
Coco Bongo.
Right. Sorry.
Well, okay. Here's what I want to talk about, so I can get it in there. Okay. So the 4 mask sequences. So he puts on the mask 4 times in this movie, which obviously are the highlights. We have the great makeup going on. You know, we have our Tex Avery effects. It's all working like gangbusters. You know, I like that it's over the course of like 4 nights. You know, we could pretty much get like a transformation per night. You know, we have the first night on the town. You know, he's wearing the smoking jacket. You know, it's the first night. You know, which of course I think it was this kind of, I don't know if it's improvised or not. I think in the script it was like snazzy, and he changed it to smoking. I don't know if it was because he was wearing the smoking jacket or not, but you know, it's iconic.
Smoking.
Yeah. Anyway, so you know, the carnival, as I mentioned, the whole Carnival Barker thing with the balloon animals from the comic. Just only when he pulled out the Tommy gun, he mowed them all down. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, you know, he, you know, it's interesting. So night 1, he's getting revenge on 3 people: the landlady, you know, the thugs who are basically, you know, kind of like make him feel helpless, and the ordinarily who would make him feel helpless, and the mechanic. So all that's great, and all that's like a great introduction to like the physics that we're working with. And each night there's kind of an escalation in how much the mask is just kind of like affecting the world almost, and affecting Ipkiss, and getting more and more into the kind of cartoony logic of things. It's kind of like the heightened quality of the world. So night 2, we go to the Coco Bongo, and basically he gets kind of almost not revenge, but he kind of redeems, you know, like the interaction he had with Tina Carlisle on you know, the night he was basically, you know, booted from the club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So this is just an iconic section. Just you know, it's the look of the movie. It's him in the cool yellow zoot suit. He's stealing money from the bank that doesn't respect him.
And of course, he goes full wolf whistle on Tina Carlisle.
Yep, full Tex Avery wolf. Yep,
which was awesome.
Yeah, but I don't know about you guys. I have so much nostalgia for Hey Punchy Joe.
Oh God.
God, I just love that song. I love everything about it. I just love that. Just the choreography is like 90% them, like doing all the moves and stuff. They work their butts off for that, and dear God, does it show?
And it does. Like the choreography was amazing. Like I remember hearing that Jim Carrey actually helped Cameron Diaz with the choreography.
Yeah.
So like I said, I still think I think this above like even something like Ace Ventura really showed what Jim Carrey was capable of.
Well, yes. I mean, just overall with him as the Mask. I mean, again, it's living cartoon. It's like it's everything that Jim Carrey has just been kind of like had inside of him that we kind of got a taste of in Ace Ventura, but now we went full tilt with like the man is actually a living cartoon, and we're with the makeup and everything on him. Again, it's pretty much there was actually testing of like, do we just want to paint his face green? Where ultimately they kind of did, but they found like this great technique so he can be as expressive as he is, and somehow he can talk with those teeth. And I'm still wondering if they ADR'd him or not, because I you have to imagine they must have, but there's a chance he was that good at speaking with those teeth. They didn't need to ADR him that much.
Yeah.
What do you think about any of this, Tiki? Like,
I mean, I just think that he's the whole performance was obviously very groundbreaking for the time. The use of prosthetics, like you said, it is it kind of would go on to sort of shape his career in some ways.
Yeah. What about the Oscar scene, Tiki? What do you think about the Oscar scene?
I mean, it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun.
It's just so funny that Dorian's like he's like on stage at the Oscars. Suddenly he's reacting to it too. Like it's not just like a thing only he's seeing, like Deadpool like breaking the fourth wall. It's like, okay, no, they're seeing like this random audience just popped up and they have no idea what to do with it after he's like shapeshifting to God knows how many like celebrities.
Uh-huh.
Yep. All right. Did you guys talk about Calloway and Doyle?
Yes, we did.
Okay, good. Fun duo.
Greg, I do want to bring up with Calloway though. I do Dragon. I do know that he has a presence in the animated series. If you want to speak to that.
Well, they are both in the animated series.
Oh no. Again?
Comic actually had a big meaty role in the comic. In the sequel, he basically he has the mask. What?
Oh no, you just cut out for a second. I'm sorry.
Okay, what about now?
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, you're fine now. Yes.
But yeah, so Calloway, he was in the sequel. Calloway was in the comics. Like he got possession of the mask next. So Calloway had like a whole thing.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, but yeah, so it's just kind of the dynamic he has with Doyle, a lot more, kind of fun and comedic. The fact that it's just the mask is not intimidated by Lieutenant Calloway at all. With the whole, when we have this great scene where he's like, he's the French mask, and we're pulling all the things out of his pants. And by the way, practical, just the shorts are cut off, like the pants are cut off at the bottom, and someone is below frame, throwing up like all these ridiculously oversized items. And one of them, of course, hilariously, is a picture of Calloway's wife. Says like, call me lover. XOXO, Margaret, you son of a. Just like, what? I thought you had a sense of humor. After all, you married her.
Oh God!
How great is that thing he does with his teeth? He zooms off. He zoops off.
That was nice.
Yeah. So, Cuban Pete, Jake, you want to speak to Cuban Pete a little bit more here?
Yeah, that was one of the scenes I was familiar with growing up on this. It's one that I had watched, out of context because, okay, The Mask, and I heard the song Cuban Pete, so I was like, all right, I'll give it a watch. Unfortunately, I didn't watch it until obviously just recently, but I did see the Cuban Pete sequence, and it was awesome. seeing him like out of nowhere spotting this classic like Latino suit or like flamenco suit or whatever, and make the entire police squad dance alongside him, shaking his maracas.
We actually know someone who's done this.
Who?
Do we?
Chris R. Notarelli. He did a whole Cuban Pete performance in the mask get up.
Oh my God! Was that for a fan film?
No, it was just for something. I don't know. I forget what. I don't know if it was like in school or not. But he just did like an event thing. However, he did make a fan film about the mask. It was more kind of based on the comic and had Walter in it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I always felt like Walter, if they ever did a legit Mask sequel, like Walter would have been the thing to do, like the Mask going up against Walter.
Mm-hmm.
It was Walter like the big hulking Frankenstein creature kind of henchman going after the Mask. Anyway,
Right.
so let's see. So we ever talked. So again, what I was trying to say during all the Harry Potter talk, the dog's wonderful. You know, it's just this great. You know, this great. It's amazing the dog can improvise, right? Like the dog like improvise, like, you know, like the look to the cop when he's like stirring awake, like all that. Like that's incredible.
I mean, it is one of the better like animals in movies from at least this era for sure.
And it's like not it's human, but not too human. Like where the dog won't let go of the things that it fetches. Like it's a realistic dog thing.
It's like, no, not the cheese, the keys.
Yeah.
It's like Milo's a great dog. It's like he's like, I was like, at least Stanley has him in his corner at first.
Yeah. I was gonna talk about kind of the climax, but Tiki, you wanna feel anything out?
No, I honestly, Dragon, I've pretty much said all I need to say. So yeah, if we want to jump into the climax, let's do it.
Sure. So so Stanley. Well, I want to mention this too. How heartbreaking was it when he was in that jail cell and that dog was like waiting outside?
You know what? That scene always stuck out to me as a kid, as just being very, very sad.
Yeah.
And also, I just want to point out how much of a cliche it was in the 90s and through the early 2000s to have, like, the third act Low of Lows be the main character in jail. It was a running thing for quite a while, honestly.
Funnily enough, that didn't happen in Ace Ventura.
Yeah. I mean, two off the top of my head I can think of are the Super Mario Brothers movie for the fucking dumbest of reasons. Plumbers! And then also, what else? The Flintstones and Viva fucking Rock Vegas, Dragon.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I haven't seen either of those.
I will defend Viva Rock Vegas to some extent. Anyways.
Okay.
So, one thing I do want to mention about Ben Stein before I forget, because I wasn't here for that part. Dr. Arthur Newman, I do love that, like, the first time he puts on that mask is, like, in jest. So Ben Stein's the whole reason he puts on the mask in the first place.
Uh-huh.
And yet, that's something, too, I do, my one gripe with the movie, this actually tie into this, so, the whole daytime weakness for the mask is kind of BS. Okay, it's just the whole reason it's in there is like it's like an old school monster, not
it's essentially a gimme. It's a plot gimme. There's no real reason to have it. It's just there.
So here's the thing. Actually, there originally was a reason, but they axed it at the end. I think because they wanted the mask to be in the third act. Now I can only assume what happens. I haven't read it myself, but it sounds like originally we introduced that day-night thing. So basically, I assume it would have been a ticking clock thing for Stanley has to save the day on his own. Then eventually he puts on the mask, and I guess they realize, like, okay, we don't need to wait for night to fall. We can just, like, we just have him get the mask some other way, which is probably why we have, like, the lame, like, I just want the last kiss request is my guess. I think that's ultimately what happened there. But yeah, so it's always like a weird weakness to give, like, maybe Loki was a night god. That's not all how that works. We have, like, a whole bunch of, like, 9 Marvel movies.
Also, I don't think we ever brought this up, but how do we feel about this being the first, like, major on-screen interpretation of Loki?
I always geeked out about it, even before we had, like, the Marvel. Oh, wow, like, we're mentioning Loki, and then we have, to its credit, like, the one interesting thing the Son of the Mask movie had going for is we actually introduced Loki.
That, and then I also I don't remember if you were here for this or not, Drake, but I also cited the fact that, like, with Son of the Mask, they actually do take some advantage of the fact that multiple people are wearing the mask throughout that movie.
Tiki, you say that, but Jamie Kennedy and the dog are the only ones that put on that mask, though.
And the baby.
No. The baby does not put on the mask, Tiki. The baby was conceived by the mask.
Oh shit, you're right. Oh god. Okay. Okay, never mind.
Which is why I'm raising an eyebrow. You making that point, Brittany? It's like it's a man and a dog.
Yeah, I forgot about that
anything,
element of it. Yeah.
If anything, Tiki, less people put on the mask in this movie because we had Dorian put on the mask in this movie. And in that movie, it's only 2.
Hence, Son of the Mask.
Yeah,
That's fair.
there you go. Anyway, but yes, okay. So we're at the I thought it was a good move that Stanley saves the day. That he kind of proves that we don't just like say, oh, it's you that matters and not the mask, or you're both the same guy. We see like Stanley does step up. We root for our nice guy, and he kind of is in a diehard situation. It initially doesn't go his way, but he ultimately he had the initiative. He got in there, and he basically beat the crap out of the mobster, and he got the George McFly punch on him. It all worked out. It was nice. We gave him a win. We needed to give him a win. Basically, he has to earn the kiss at the end of the movie. I think he did. I think he earned the kiss. And the thing about this, the whole movie, we interrupt him right before he gets the kiss, the red hot riding hood, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that was nice, and we put the mask on again. He's like, he's in the great gangster suit and everything with the giant bang flag gun, which is priceless. Which if we're the comic.
They would not have bang flags coming out of them.
No, they would not. Yep. Anyway, so of course, I like they had the big ace up their sleeve in case anyone was like concerned. I love that they had like the big plot point, like, okay, the dog's gonna put on the mask, people are gonna love it. Like that was their big, like, okay.
That is a good ace in the hole for the movie for sure.
And Little Blue, this was mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the end, the end, he finally gets the kiss. He throws the mask, which there was a reshoot where they actually had to, like originally Charlie jumped in the water and that was the ending, but they realized we have to have that dog get in the mask. People are loving that. This dog's too incredible not to end on. Yeah, which is a very good call, and I guess the only thing really left to discuss briefly is I kind of mentioned earlier, but yeah. The franchising on the mask was interesting. The animated series, which was great and very much in the spirit of the film, a lot more lighthearted, a lot more comedic. We have Jacob, who does the voice of the mask.
What?
Wait, what?
Jacob, who does the voice? I was asking you, Jacob. You know who does the voice of the mask in the animated series?
Rob Paulson.
Yes, the great Rob Paulson. He's wonderful in that show.
Little Blue Dragon did mention the Nintendo Power thing.
I did mention that.
Yeah, you might have missed it, but that we did go over that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
But yeah, it's interesting that would you guys have wanted to see like a sequel to The Mask, and if so, how would you want to have seen it done, like properly? Not Son of the Mask, but
you need Carrey back for one, obviously.
Do you not think it could have worked with somebody else, like usually a different character completely or something?
Honestly, I feel like Stanley Ipkiss was developed so well in this movie that I kind of feel like you do kind of need him back. Honestly,
the Mask as an entity could have survived without Stanley Ipkiss, but Stanley Ipkiss could not have survived without Jim Carrey.
That is true.
That's what I'm saying. If let's just say if the movie. Even if they did another one that did not have Stanley Ipkiss returning, and the story was still good enough, I think, and they had an actor who could pull off all the physicality that required, I think it could work. That's just my opinion, anyway.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it through the lens of if I'm a studio person in the 90s. I'm getting Jim Carrey in that sequel. I don't give a shit how contrived the reason why Stanley Ipkiss ends up with the mask again and puts the mask back on is. We need Jim Carrey. I am very much I would really like to see what Jim Carrey, especially a Jim Carrey that's a little bit more evolved in his career and his acting. I would really like to see what that Jim Carrey would do with a character like this.
It is interesting in the history of the Jim Carrey movies where you look at 94 was, again, hence the reason we're doing this, was his year. And way back when he said never wanted to do sequels, and one of the big reasons for this was he didn't have a great time doing Ace Ventura 2. He did Ace Ventura 2. Think of it, we're at a place now where if you look through where he's gone now, this main sequels that he's done, not counting Sonic, because that's something a little else and that's recent, but he's doing sequels again being the operative point. But it's the fact that you have Ace Ventura got a sequel. Dumb and Dumber, years later, got a sequel.
Oh, God.
one missing. One of these things is not like the other. The only one didn't have a proper Jim Carrey sequel. The Mask.
Who knows? Maybe who knows? Maybe that'll be the true last thing he does is to cap off his career.
It would be like the Logan for Jim Carrey, man.
Totally would be.
Oh god! Like imagine like Stanley Ipkiss on his last legs is like an old man. He's putting on the mask, and we just like Jim Carrey brings out like all the stuff he's been kind of bottling up for.
Oh man, dude! Oh come on. That's tantalizing. That's tantalizing.
Right. You know, it's the mask. Like, imagine this, and here's your premise, okay? The mask has, like, again, it's implied to have, like, changed hands and have, like, multiple adventures. So if you really wanted to actually do a franchise it in between, you do, like, the last movie with Carrey, and then you see all the stuff that happened in between. It's like prequels along the way. So the mask has changed hands, going all these places. And eventually, years later, finds its way back to Ipkiss. You maybe have some kind of like, oh god, but then it's like, you know, it's like, see, we check in with his life now. We maybe have like a sad Indiana Jones life, perhaps. At this
point. We don't need to do that to Stanley.
I know you're.
Not every legacy character needs to be a depressed old man dragon.
No, but think about this though. Years later, that dog would not be around.
Aww.
Well, yes, you're not wrong about that. That would be.
I guess what I'm getting at though is like you have a need that needs to be filled by the mask, and that there's something like a new suppression that would, in the fact that he's probably, again, maybe it's like looking at it the way we kind of look at things. He's nostalgic for the cartoons and the way things used to be. Perhaps I don't know. Throwing it out there, it would be a way of like, it's like kind of a last ditch sort of thing, like a man, like basically a man.
He's like working. He's like an animator on a streaming show that just gets instantly canceled and like tax written off.
Careful with the animator thing, because that gave us Son of the Mask, and we didn't do anything with that whole animator thing, so we can't make him an animator.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, Son of the Mask did not have Jim Carrey in it, all right?
True. No, you're right. I guess what I'm getting is, like, what if you have, like, almost like a mid to end of, well, again, I don't know how long it's going to take to make this mask, I don't want to say end of life thing, but it's just the fact that you have, like, almost like a midlife crisis sort of thing, a man.
I mean, we know that Jim Carrey is kind of, like, teetering on the edge of acting retirement, so it would be, like, not end of life, but end of career.
All of this going to say that, again, the mask was rife with potential. We said the animated series proved this, like, keeping Jim Carrey around, or at least our Jim Carrey inspired figure around with the Ipkiss character, would have very much, definitely had some stuff to lend to it. Again, they always could have done Walter for a sequel, I would attest. But, it's the fact that they took a gamble on Carrey. It paid off, as it very much had. It was like he was the safe bet to have in '94, it would seem. And it just was this really special, unique thing. This film, it was just something that still just brought me endless amounts of joy. I'll tell you guys something. In preparation for this, I watched some reaction videos, seeing people watch The Mask for the first time.
Oh, that's nice.
Giggles. And you know what, man? Seeing all these people, both some with their parents, some with just like couples, and some just like people like the younger generation watching for the first time. I tell you, man, never fails. They loved it. They were laughing their heads off. They were wrapped up in it. They were like jumping when they see it, like him like scream, like shocked at the cops, with like his skull and his tongue and his eyes are popping out of his head. They're going nuts for it. The movie holds up. You don't have like this weird arbitration with like, I don't know, the third act of Ace Ventura is relevant. Like, no, the mask mask works, man. The mask still works.
Yeah, the mask definitely, in terms of that kind of tense, the mask definitely holds up more than Ace Ventura.
And I tell you, man, that makes me feel good. Just the fact that one of my favorite movies growing up, and still, like, man, this was my favorite Jim Carrey. Was one of, pre-Deadpool world. Honestly, I mean, this was like Phantasm's a year before. I mean, you had Phantasm, you had The Mask. These were kind of my top movies at that time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, this is very much like this was like a happy childhood, this movie. So I still love it. And everything was going for it, and it was just again, it's every time I have a fond memory of Jim Carrey. I mean, a part of it is going to be in the DNA. It's going to be like a little green DNA follicle, and it's going to be The Mask.
The sad thing is, this movie's hard to find on streaming unless it's like on Tubi with ads.
Which is a crime, and like it's a shame that nowadays the way we see The Mask, it's going to be like that weird cameo in Space Jam, where it's just like part of like the.
Oh man! Oh.
That's what's really sad about it,
Oh yeah. All right, Jacob. Any final thoughts on your end?
As I said earlier, And this is my first time watching The Mask, so, and I must say I was very pleasantly surprised by it. Like, it's like amazing, like how well it's able to like make a live action cartoon in a way that didn't overstep anything. It didn't become like too out there or too surprisingly grounded in terms of that in that regard. Like, you found a very harmonious blend of the madcap insanity, but also the grounded nature and the human center. Which I think Jim Carrey, like, no one else could have pulled it off the way he did. I mean, as I did say earlier, that if they could find someone with the same physicality, it could still work. But let's just say for that time and place, and even now, I don't think anybody could ever match what he did for this movie.
Is there a modern actor we think could actually do it?
God.
I mean, who knows? Maybe someone out there where we don't know.
Okay, you guys are gonna roll your eyes at this so fucking hard because I know it's a huge cliche for me at this point.
And before you say that, I was like, remember, Jim Carrey was an unknown when this movie was technically made. So
this is true, yeah.
So technically, there could be someone out there that we don't know of that would be perfect.
Okay, but just on the basis of this dude just being a very multi-talented individual, give it to Gosling. Give it to Gosling.
Tiki, I swear to God, I'm not joking here, okay? The moment I knew you were going to say I'm serious. It's going to sound like I'm just throwing it in there because you just said it, but no, I'm serious. I did think there's no way he's going to mention Gosling, is it? There's no way.
Okay, to be fair, Gosling did just kill it on SNL, so he is fresh in my mind.
I gotta be honest. I mean, the only contemporary I can think of for Carrey, and mind you, this. Yeah, we don't need this because he's got other things right now. But it's like the other Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, I don't know about. I feel like he just do Deadpool. That's the problem.
I know that's what I'm saying. We don't need it, but I'm just saying, like, press for like
I don't know. Anyways, all right, guys, is this a good point to leave it off?
He's got the potential to get the physical chops.
Okay, I feel you. Okay. Johnny Depp would make a great Mask. Maybe back in the Pirates of the Caribbean era. Maybe.
I don't think so. He was the guy getting sucked in the bed like a little before
this
happened.
Yeah, I don't think he would either.
All right. Okay. Well, I think that's about it, y'all. So thanks to Little Blue and Kogias for joining us in the chat. Next time, I'm not going to be on for this, but Dragon and Jacob are talking Dumb and Dumber. So,
well, it might not be Jacob. It might be
okay, my bad.
So someone will be on with me.
Well, yes, and it's not going to be me, and it maybe won't be Jacob. So,
but definitely Dragon.
Yeah,
right. So curious to see how that one holds up. Something tells me it's not going to hold up as well as this one did. All right, y'all. Have a good night.
Did you miss me? I guess not.
Smoke.